facts. Mr. Sullivan also points out, just in the last year alone, we've created 1.9 million more jobs, with 280,000 government jobs lost. In the last 3 years, government employment has actually declined 2.6%, which is more than during the Reagan administration. So when the right-wing Republican ideology machine does its work and tries to convince the American electorate that this president has presided over a bloated government getting larger by the day, just the opposite is true. The facts are, government is smaller, and this economy is coming back thanks to President Barack Obama and this administration. That's what we ought to be talking about. The same can be said about taxes. Listening to the Republican candidates, especially in these primary debates, it'd be easy to believe that President Obama has raised taxes, but nothing could be farther from the truth. Over the course of the last 3 years, this president, this administration, and Democrats in Congress have lowered taxes on 95% of the American working families across this country. 1/3 of the stimulus was tax cuts for 95% of all Americans, including cutting the payroll tax, which Republicans opposed. The myth is that President Bush was the conservative on deficits, and then President Obama is the big spender. Well, the facts are that President Bush's tax and spend problems and programs raised this debt by $5 trillion over 8 years, and our president, both past and projected, is now scored at less than half that. This was an important week for our country, a difficult week. The Supreme Court held its hearings on the constitutionality of health care reform. I have to say I am still very hopeful. Somehow this court is going to put the facts ahead of ideology. And when it does, declare that this constitutional question is no longer one that we ought to be concerned about at all, because the Affordable Care Act, if you stand on the facts, is as constitutional as anything that Congress has passed in the last 200 years. We ought to recognize the facts are overwhelmingly on our side. 105 million Americans today don't have to worry about lifetime or annual health care limits anymore. 3.8 million seniors saved $2.3 billion on drug costs alone just in the last 18 months. 2.5 million young adults are able to sign up on their family programs unlike anything they've ever been able to do before, and over 33 million Americans are going to have health insurance for the first time as a result of this act. At long last, we're on the road to universal coverage with an unprecedented opportunity to improve quality and access and reduce cost. But make no mistake, I believe someday, as history is recorded, this will be one of the proudest moments for the Democratic Party and for this administration, and we ought to represent that across this country, and I know we will. Much the same could be said for foreign policy. The right-wing ideology machine would have us believe that this president is apologetic about American military strength. And I must say I'm proud of the president for apologizing to the people of Afghanistan for the act of a deranged killer shooting innocent civilians. But I think Vice President Biden said it so well. Vice President Biden summed up our foreign policy in a very concise way not long ago. The example of our power is now matched by the power of our example. President Obama didn't ignore Osama bin Laden. He ordered a daring raid to take out an enemy who had taken out so many American lives. He ended the war in Iraq. And our longest war in Afghanistan is now coming to an end. Al-Qaeda is weaker and less popular than it has ever been before in Muslim countries. And thanks to American leadership and an international coalition, Colonel Gaddafi is no longer ruling Libya, and not one life was lost in that whole effort. That's thanks to the President of the United States and our coalition around the world. This administration has been strong, and it's been smart. And these are no small accomplishments. They've been achieved in the most polarized political and legislative environment that I think any of us have seen in the time that we've watched Washington. So President Obama, with the support of his leadership in Congress, has averted a depression, has saved an industry vital to our national economy, has ended a mismanaged war, has achieved nearly universal health care, has appointed 2 outstanding women to the United States Supreme Court, has made major investments in renewable energy, brought farm prices across South Dakota and all through farm country to the highest levels they've been in all of American history. Ended a policy of torture that violated American ideals. Ended don't ask, don't tell. And created nearly 4 million new jobs in the last 3 years. That's the administration we can be proud of, and those are the facts we ought to be taking all out across this country as this campaign unfolds over the next 6 months. Let us not forget how good these 3 years have been as a result of the leadership of this president. So put aside the right-wing ideological spin, and those are the facts. And these undisputed facts give us all the need that we ought to consider as we think of the constructive passion that we can take into this campaign. There's nothing wrong with passion as long as it's constructive and accurate. A passion to support this president and Democrats in South Dakota and around this country. Sullivan said in his piece, in summarizing the accomplishments of this administration, that if he wins this battle in 2012, it is in many ways even more important than the victory he had in 2008. Because it will be a mandate for an 8-year shift away from the excesses of inequality, of overreach, of reckless deficit spending, and it will make all that he has done these past 4 years, in Sullivan's word, irreversible. Well, one of my great disappointments in the time that I've been in public life is that so much of what I had to do was to keep the Senate or the government from rolling back the progress we have made over these last 50 years. And as I consider what this election's all about, I wish that it would be about 2 competing visions for moving this country forward. But frankly, I don't see that. I think this is an election that will make the determination whether or not we go forward, or if we take up the Republican agenda, whether we roll back those programs so vital to the strength and the well-being and the equality that we've had in America through Medicare, Social Security, good education, infrastructure, and all of the investments we've made in the American people. Mitt Romney's tax policy is a perfect example. Extending the Bush tax cuts for another 10 years, sharply increasing tax cuts for corporations, reducing tax cuts for the working families, and paying for all those tax cuts for those at the very top, with cuts in education, Medicare, Social Security, farms, and roads. This is fundamentally a choice that the American people will make November. That isn't the kind of America that I think South Dakotans, the American voter, can support. I would argue it runs totally contrary to the values and all that we've acquired as South Dakotans now over these 120 years. Many of us have descended from the rugged individualists we're so proud of in our families. I certainly have. People who were able to take care of themselves. People who understood that being an ardent individualist was really what it took to survive. But even the most ardent individualist understood that there were times in the community that building roads and schools and barns and protecting families required community action, required us to pull together for the strength of the community and the family. We know that policies that help only a few ultimately hurt our country. And we know there's a balance to be struck. There's a place for rugged individualism, but there's also a place for collective action. We're all in this together. We all need each other. And really, as a country, we're no better than the least fortunate there is among us. That understanding is inherent in all of us as South Dakotans tonight. And it's at the core of what it is to be a Democrat. I mentioned when I started how good it is to see so many old friends. I first came here 36 years ago as a 20-year-old kid running for Congress. Started to make my case to many of you about why I thought I could do the job. Today I'm a grandfather of 4. I've had my ups and downs, as all of us have. But we keep coming back. Why? Because we match our passion with logic. Because we know change doesn't happen overnight. Because we know that progress flows from the work of very dedicated people. Our founding fathers didn't say we had to create a perfect union. What they said is, and what they expected of us, is that each generation we would try to build a more perfect union. And that is the work of our lives. That's why we're here tonight. That's the work of our party. That's the work of every one of those candidates who are going to put their heart and everything on the line today and tonight and tomorrow because they believe. They want better for our country. And so, that is the work of our party. And that's what we celebrate tonight as we mark George McGovern Day. And it's why I, too, am proud to be a Democrat. Thank you all very much.